Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Well, this is today's repair project. Local ham picked up this nice Icom 738 off of eBay, and it was mishandled by the bumpiest ship in the shipping business. You may know who I'm referring to. I'm not going to say their name, but it was packed with bubble wrap, but not a lot of packing around the sides of the radio in the box. And a tip, when you're shipping a radio, especially one that has nice long knobs on the front, take the knobs off and make sure you've got plenty of packing on the front of the radio. Let me show you what happened to this poor Icom. I was just evaluating it and going through all the features and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and it mostly works just fine. With the exception of the controls down here in this corner. So let me give you a close-up of what happened down here. You can probably tell already. You can see the notch control is missing. This plastic is actually cracked and broken here. This knob is broken, the passband tuning. The control actually works. But the shaft is bent, badly bent. The memory channel encoder is working. It's just a little loose, a little wobbly. So I'm not sure what's going on there. The RIT control is also wobbly, but it does work. I'm changing the RIT, but that's wobbly. None of these three buttons, the notch, the RIT, and the, I assume that's variable transmit, they don't respond. So this radio obviously had a severe impact on this corner, and we've got some damage inside there. So I'm going to take the panel off, take the case off, and see what it takes to get this front panel off. And we're going to take a look at what we have to do there. The owner did obtain replacement parts from Bulgaria. Somebody was parting out a 7300, so we've got a couple of controls here and a knob, replacement knob. So we have replacement parts for these damaged controls, at least two of them. I don't know about the RIT control here. We'll have to figure out what to do about that. So let's get inside the radio and see what the damage is below the faceplate. Well, cover the kid's eyes. We got a naked radio here. We're looking at the bottom of the radio. I haven't taken the front plastic panel off yet. I just got the case panel off, and I thought I'd give you a look inside of the 738. This is the RF board on the bottom. Here's a spot for additional filtering. I see a single sideband filter sitting there. Yep. Looks like the IF frequency is 9.0115 megahertz, and it's a 2.3 kilohertz single sideband filter. This is the optional filter position, and this is probably the AM filter over here. Big metal spring clips here to make contact with the bottom of the chassis and get the grounding. That's the antenna tuner. I can see the servo motors down here. This has the built-in antenna tuner. Typical Icom construction. It's nicely done. Everything's real clean. We've got all the cable loom. It's all tied up real nice. Everything's routed real clean. Let's flip it over and take a look at the top half of the radio. There we go. This is the filter network, switchable filter network. These are the various bandpass filters for the different band segments. We've got an unpopulated section down here. That's interesting. I haven't seen that before, but there's component spots for an entire another filter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 filter sections. I wonder if this would have been for 6 meters. I wonder if they were planning on using this board in a radio that had 6 meters as well. Power amp section over here, obviously with the big heat sink. I can see the power amp board down inside of there. Tiny little speaker. And our internal chassis fan here pulls air from the front. All of the digital electronics are on the front panel up here. Up underneath there's the digital board. And our area of damage is down here in this corner, right down here. It looks like we've got a metal subchassis and this plastic face. So I have already taken the knobs off. I'm going to go ahead and pull this plastic faceplate off and see what's going on where our damage is. The main VFO knob does not have a grub screw on it. Okay. Let me shut the camera off. I'm going to have to figure out what's holding this on. I think I have to disconnect a few things. I'll be back when I get the front panel off. Well, this is not going to be fun. Two screws at the bottom of each side of the front panel bring it away from the chassis. And we got lots of interconnecting cables here. Now, many of these cables are plugged in and can be unplugged. For example, this one here is just a plug. I could pop that right off. These ribbon cables are zero insertion force connectors. They're easy to pop off. Some of these are not plugs. Some of these are soldered in. For example, J3 here, that's not a plug. Those are just plastic guides, and these pins are actually soldered on the board. I can't get the plastic face away from the metal chassis, and I think that there are screws underneath this board holding that plastic face on. So I don't think I have any choice but to remove the digital board. By the way, the VFO knob did have a grub screw hidden underneath the rubber tuning ring, which just slides on there. So that's where the grub screw is on the tuning knob on this guy. They hid it, made it a bit of a puzzle. So in order to get the bezel off, to get to the nuts on those two pots, so I can take those pots out and replace them, I have to take all of this apart. To get myself some wiggle room, I had to take the cable loom loose. Now, a little note on this. There's a ton of connectors here. And they all go up here on the board. But in order to keep things clear, what I've done on each connector is I've written the number of the jack it goes into. This goes into jack 29. This goes into jack 2, you see. So I took a marker, and as I disconnected each one of these, I looked at the jack number and I wrote it on the connector. So that'll help keep clear. For the most part, you can keep clear because of the way that they're tied off. They're run the right length and angled the right way to reach certain connectors on the board. So in putting this back in, they would fall pretty close to where they need to go. But that's just a little extra step that'll save some time. One annoying thing with Icom, if I was to build this, the way I would build it would be every one of these wires that comes to this board would be a connector, every single one, so that they could all just be unhooked and this board could just come away. But they don't build these things to be serviced. They design these things to be assembled in the most efficient way possible. And for whatever reason, that means in some cases there are not connectors on this board, but pin headers. For example, this is not a connector. This is a little plastic guide, and all it's doing is holding the pins straight so they can be soldered into this board. That's soldered at this end, and then the other end's a connector. It would be fine if they did all of them like that, but they don't. Some of them are connectors at this end and soldered at that end. Some of them are connectors at that end and soldered at this end. It's a mix, and it just depends on I guess, the assembly order. For example, on this pot here that I'm going to be replacing, this is not a connector. These wires are soldered to that little PC board. They're soldered in. And then they come up here and they tie into the cable loom. And they end up coming out here to a connector at this end through this rat's nest of ties. So no problem replacing the pot at this end. I'll just desolder that from that board and solder it onto the board that the replacement control's on. But it makes it hard to work on, you know. They're not built to be worked on. Okay, progress report. I figured out the mystery of what was holding the front bezel on. And it was interconnect pins. See these right here? Header pins. Those line up with connectors that are underneath this board. Here we go. One there, one there. So now that I've got the front panel off, I can get these two pots out and replace them. Yay. Well, that's only part of the problem. Here's the other part of the problem. See that? This corner of the PC board is broken. That's why these switches are not working. There's traces that come along here, 2 traces that come over. And they come up here to these switches up here. They come down back over to this connector. So I'm going to have to patch those traces. Fortunately, it looks like it's only 2 of them. The board cracks over this way. It doesn't look like it damaged that trace, but it's definitely affected this lead here, which feeds into these switches. So that's why they aren't working. So now I got to figure out if I can get this board off of here easily enough. Looks like it's just held in with screws. Hopefully I can fix that board. Oh man. You know, looking at it, I'm seeing some cold solder joints too. Yeah, that impact was great enough to break the PC board right here. Yeah, trying to get a good camera angle. I'm sure you can see that. So yeah, that's the major damage. So what I think I'll do next is I'll replace the 2 pots. I'll get that out of the way. And then I will look at trying to get the control board, because this is what all the push buttons are on. These are all part of this board, which is going to have little switches, and these buttons all just rest in the plastic, so I'll have to be careful when I take this board out that I keep this thing face down so these buttons all stay in place, and I don't have to try to figure out which ones went where. So yeah, quite a project this is turning out to be. Okay, well, progress. Got the 2 new pots in, so we've got 4 good controls here. Straightened the shaft on this one a little bit. I got to straighten the shaft. Nah, I guess the encoder's okay. We'll leave that. It's not bent too badly. I might try to spring that out. This one was bent pretty bad. It's a little bit straighter. It's really tricky straightening these shafts because they're split down the middle. But I got those replaced. Let's see if I can turn it around here. Yeah, there we go. So that's a new pot. And that's a new pot, and we're fine. I checked the battery while I was in here. It's at 3.2 volts, so that's okay. We should be all right there. So now I'm turning my attention to the control panel. I took the board out of it. Most of the buttons that are in here have keepers. I don't know if you can see those little screws in there. They have keepers that hold them in place, but some of them, like these, are just laying in there. So I'm very careful to keep this face down so none of the buttons move or fall out. Be really careful with that. And here is the switchboard. You can see all the switches and the broken corner up here. Now, fortunately, you can see where the traces on this board on the other side are shown in green on this side to aid in troubleshooting, which is really nice. Now this crack comes right across here on this side. See that crack? And it looks like it cuts through those traces. But when we come over here to the other side, these traces are intact. The crack has not broken through them. The only traces that are cut are from this corner right here, which are two traces. Now one of them has a connection point here, that inner trace, and has a connection point up here, so I should be able to just run a bridge wire carefully to there. This top trace, however, goes all all the way over to this pin on this connector. And on this side, comes down to here. So I'll have to run a bridge wire all the way across the board, snake it along through here to that pin. So I'm going to use some pretty small wire, and I'm going to bridge those. And then we'll put this board back in. And then we'll try to reassemble the whole thing, and we should be done, and the radio should be functional again. Well, we're done with fixing the board. You can see I've wired a bridge in there and a bridge here to replace these two traces that were broken by this corner breaking off. And we got the board back in there, and all the buttons are okay. And I managed to push the plastic on this notch out a little bit, and I'm going to take a razor knife and trim these burrs away and just clean that up a little bit before I put this back together. So once I'm done with that, we'll reassemble the front panel of the radio, and then I'll have to hook all the wire looms back up, all the connectors back up, and mount the front panel back on, and we'll be ready to test it.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends pretty much what you want to do. You know, if you enjoy talking to local people, local meaning, you know,
All right. Well, success. The buttons over here work now. I can turn the notch filter on. I can adjust it. We've got the transmit incremental tuning, I guess. Receiver incremental tuning. We can turn it on and off, and we can adjust it. Passband shift works just fine. Memory channel selector works. All the other buttons are working great too. You can hear the antenna tuner ratcheting there. Oh.
4352 into North Florida. So NG0E, KK4ORP, that's you.
I can bypass the tuner, switch it in, and it tunes. We go, let's go to 17 meters. Okay, it's quiet there, and I hit tuner, and it tunes right in. And let's see here, we'll go to AM, so we're going to put out a carrier. And I'm putting out power. Yep, SWR dropped right down. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, ALC's working. KB9RLW, test 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. KB9RLW. Okay, that's good. We got power out.
That's for darn sure. Islam is a religion, yeah, kinda, but it's also...
Yeah. So, I think we have a successful repair. Front panel works. Radio works, puts out its power. Sounds good on receive, even though it's got a teeny tiny little speaker up here. So I'm going to contact the owner and tell him his radio is ready. Come pick it up. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like the video with a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. Also, join the Facebook page. We can discuss the content of the videos, ask questions, find answers, and hopefully develop a lively community. Thanks again.